of Aesop's fables reads, "A dog, used to eating eggs, saw an oyster, and opening his mouth to the widest extent, swallowed it down with the utmost relish, supposing it to be an egg. Soon afterwards, suffering great pain in his stomach, he said, 'I deserve all of this torment for my folly and thinking that everything round must be an egg.'" The moral of the story? They who act without sufficient thought will often fall into unsuspecting dangers. The freedom of speech and the implied freedom of thought are critical to our country. These rights, and many more, were some of the fundamental reasons that our country was founded. But often, in regards to our government, we are not utilizing our constitutional rights by allowing our government to take advantage of us. Like the dog with the oyster, we are not sufficiently analyzing our government and its workings, and the results can be detrimental. We need to not only analyze what our government is doing, but analyze the information that is available to us and put that information into use in our everyday lives. But the first issue we need to address is what our government is doing that we ought to be concerned about. Are they really producing such dangers that we might unsuspectingly fall into? There are two main dangers that we ought to be concerned about. First of all, losing our constitutional rights to Congress, and secondly, being harmed by our national debt and the annual deficit that our government has made. The situation in the current system is in fact dim, as in many ways our government is taking control of areas not allocated to them by the Constitution. The Constitution clearly states in Article 1, Section 8, what power Congress has, but they've begun to overregulate, taking control of areas such as healthcare and the environment. The trouble with politics is that they often package their intentions so neatly that we as Americans begin to believe that they had control over these areas all along. Some of the trouble began in 1935 with the Supreme Court's decision of Schechter Poultry Corporation versus the United States. This case was dealing with the Interstate Commerce Clause, one of the main ways that Congress regulates areas not allocated to them by the Constitution. The Supreme Court's decision stated that Congress could regulate anything that has a direct effect on interstate commerce. The trouble is that almost anything can be made to have a direct effect on interstate commerce. Congress now uses the Supreme Court's decision to regulate areas such as education and the environment, issues that the Founding Fathers did not intend to be regulated by the federal government, especially not underneath the Interstate Commerce Clause. Another issue is that of the national debt and the annual deficit. President Obama promised to decrease the deficit before he took office, but when the budget for 2011 was presented, the deficit was still over $1 trillion. This means that our government will be spending $1 trillion more than it brings in 2011. As these deficits keep increasing year after year, our national debt keeps increasing year after year. With such a large national debt, our country can no longer be as influential or as powerful as we once were. As we have seen, in many ways, our government is taking away our constitutional rights and is gradually tearing apart our country. Because of our power-hungry government, our nation is being harmed. We need to look to the past and remember what our founding fathers believed and what Thoreau said, that the government is best which governs least. But now that we have seen what our government is doing, what can we do about it? Anything? We as Americans have an obligation to be aware of what our government is doing. This requires effort on our part to look for truth in a world that is constantly trying to hide it. We have so much information. Thomas Jefferson once said that information is the currency of democracy. But what we need to do is analyze the information that is around us and put it into practice. We live in an age of information and have the ability to read books and newspapers and magazines as well as surf the internet. But it's what we do with that information that will truly make our nation great. Take time to read the Constitution, to look at newspaper articles about Supreme Court decisions, to research the national debt. Jefferson later said that when the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government, so that when things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied upon to set them to rights. When we analyze the information that is available to us, we truly can make a difference in our nation. But not only should we read the newspaper and surf the internet, but we need to put that information into practice in our everyday lives. One easy way that we can do that is through voting. When I was growing up, my family would have a contest with March Madness brackets. We would look at all of the top basketball teams in the nation, say who we thought would win each game, and eventually who would win the tournament. When I was 10 years old, I could have cared less about basketball, and yet I decided to participate. Most of my choices were based on things that really didn't matter, such as the team's name, their colors, and their mascot. I didn't have the ability to look at the tournament as a whole to determine who would win. The same can be said about voting. During elections, many Americans shout from the rooftop that everyone needs to be voting. But that's not really what needs to be happening. Americans shouldn't be voting based on a candidate's rankings, party affiliation, or even if they have a cool last name, but on what their views are on the critical issues. This is why it is so important that we are aware of what is going on in our government. Don't be like I was with my March Madness brackets. Voting on our governmental officials is so much more important, and we need to be utilizing our knowledge when we vote. Another way to utilize your knowledge is by calling your congressmen and women. They have been elected to be the voice of the people, so let your voice be heard. If you are happy or unhappy with what they are doing, call them and let them know. They need to know that we actually care about the issues that they are dealing with, and that we will tell them if we don't like what they are doing. Clyde Pepper once said that the mistake a lot of politicians make is in forgetting that they've been appointed and thinking that they've been anointed. We need to remind them that they work for us, and that we, as Americans, have control over their positions. And one easy way we can do this is by simply calling them and telling them how we feel about what they are accomplishing in Washington. Another way that you can utilize your knowledge is by becoming active in politics. I'm from Nebraska, and a few months back we had an issue with our Senator Ben Nelson and the health care bill. He had accepted money and incentives for his vote in favor of the bill, despite the fact that the majority of Nebraskans were against it. The day after his decision, my family received information about a rally to protest Nelson's decision. These rallies, tea parties, town hall meetings are great ways to show support of the things that you believe in. Take a stand, let your opinion be known. Yes, it does take energy and effort to utilize your knowledge, but we need more Americans who are willing to do it, willing to put forth the time, the effort that it takes to take a stand on the things that they believe in. You need to take the initiative, utilize your knowledge, and make a difference in our government. George Nicholas, one of the founding fathers of our country, once said that an enlightened people will never suffer what was established for their security to be perverted to an act of tyranny. The people of our country are suffering tyranny, as our government in many ways is taking away the rights that we have been given in the Constitution. We have seen what they are doing, abusing their power through means such as the Interstate Commerce Clause and the power to tax our nation. But the story should not end there. We have the information, the ability to make a difference in our country, to bring our nation back to the way it should be, a nation of freedom and of liberty. Our country was founded upon the principle that the people are the government, that we directly choose the presidents and the senators and representatives who make our laws. As Abraham Lincoln said in his famous Gettysburg Address, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. We have the information to take a stand, but that's exactly what we need to do. We need to become enlightened, as George Nicholas said. Don't be like the dog in my introduction. Act with sufficient thought. Utilize your knowledge. When we are enlightened, we truly can make a difference in our country. Thank you.